We're here with Kieran from Creative Assembly to talk about Shogun 2 Total War. Now, I know it's a strategy game, but that's pretty much all I know.
Oh, right. Okay, so you started from blank.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, it's a strategy game, but what else?
Okay, so Total War is a kind of a unique series in that it's a real-time strategy game because you fight real-time battles. You have these huge armies and you kind of, control them in real time, smashing up enemy armies and destroying those. But you also have a kind of a Risk-style, Civilization-style campaign map, which is turn-based, which you build your armies on. You create your civilization and your cities and everything else. And when your armies meet another army on that map, zooms right down and you control that battle in real time. So it's a combination of turn-based and real-time strategy, and it's set in feudal Japan.
You showed the presentation out on the main stage area earlier on, and as I watched that, the graphics look really elaborate for a strategy game. Yeah. It looks more like maybe like an action shooter game.
Yeah. I think one of the things we pride ourselves on graphically is the ability to push for the kind of quality you get in first-person shooter games in an RTS style, kind of game. I mean, to give you an example, right? Some of our characters you'd expect to see in an FPS level, where that's the guy zooming in, boom, shooting whatever. We can show tens of thousands of those guys on screen and have them all running at each other, kind of motion captured and everything else, and properly individually animated, picking each other out, fighting hand-to-hand sword fights and everything else. The level of detail is absolutely incredible. One of the big kind of philosophies behind the design of Total War is what it's like when you're a kid playing with all your toy soldiers, and you get right up in there with them, and you're like, oh, this little man's got a grenade and this little man's got a gun, and it's like meow, 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 like this. Okay, that is what it's like. Only it's with samurais and ninjas and ashigaru and all of the cool cavalry stuff and everything else. So when you were a kid and you were imagining those big armies smashing into each other, that's the point. That's what you're able to do.
The Total War series, you've covered a lot of different time periods and a lot of generals. As I understand, Shogun, the first Shogun, was the first Total War game,
correct, yeah.
And you're going back to the roots or whatever now. What's it like going back to basics, or what you might say?
It's pretty awesome, actually. It's really cool. There's two ways of looking at it, right? For the guys who've been in the studio the whole time, because we made Shogun 1 10 years ago, so it's a decade ago we made the original. For the guys who've been in the studio that whole time, right, this for them is a chance to take 10 years worth of what they know, 10 years worth of technology, and fold it back into the game they wanted to make right at the beginning, right? So that game they sat there imagining that the computers of the day just couldn't do, right? And that, that the art of the day couldn't do, that the rendering and the AI, the whole lot, right? They can now make that game. They can make the vision they had right at the beginning, which is why they're so excited to work on it. And for guys like me, who didn't get to work on the first Shogun, but came in a little bit later on, it's a chance to work on one of the games you wished you'd always worked on. So like when you play a game, you think, man, if I had a job in the games industry, I wish I'd made like the original Doom at ID Software. I wish I'd worked and done Command & Conquer 1 with Westwood Studios, right? So it's one of those where I actually get the chance to make one of the games I grew up playing and loving. And it's best from both angles, from the guys who've been in the studio for ages and from guys like myself who came in a bit later and were like, wow, I get a chance to make one of the games that I played. So yes, it's a really exciting thing, a very exciting thing.
So this is the best Total War yet?
I'm going to say that anyway, but in truth, genuinely yes. And the reason I say that is because it has the best combat mechanics. I really like the melee stuff. I like the mix. It's the only Total War so far where you've got a proper mix of gunpowder, arrows, swords, lances, cavalry. All of this stuff comes together in a real what-if situation. Like when you say, what would happen if a lion fought a panda or fought an alligator? Right? Who would win? Okay. That's what Total War lets you do, and it's a really cool way of combining all those things. The history, and I guess the other thing that's really important about it is the sense of narrative, the sense of story, right? One of the things that everybody always loves about the original Total Wars, like the holy trinity of games, Shogun 1, Medieval 1 and Rome 1, they'll all refer back to one of those three as their favourite game, right? Because they had this sense of feeling, this sense of place, where this was your empire, and you grew it from a tiny little speck out to this massive thing that encompassed all these islands, and you had these characters that you cared about, and that they increased in skill over time. We've got all that back for this game, and that's the really magical feeling about it, that we've got all of that kind of energy and all of that your story, we've got all of that, you writing the history of a whole country, that's back, and that's what feels really, really special.
Thanks a lot.